Hello, my name is Jeff. This is Castle Tools, your home defense network. I got an interesting question a few weeks ago. I thought it was a very interesting perspective on things. If you listened to me in the past about OC spray and stun guns, I'm not a big fan of them, but I've come back a little bit toward it because I can give you a better explanation and therefore gave me a better explanation on when the use of force with pepper spray is warranted in it. So we're going to be going through this right now. I am on Facebook. I have about 34 followers right now. If this is something that you want to do, go ahead and hit like, hit Facebook, follow me. I'm trying to get a little bit more active on it, and it will help you in the weekly understanding of self-defense, 2A self-defense law. Okay. This is a question right here by Nikki Blair. If pepper sprays and stun guns are considered less than lethal force, will I go to jail for using my gun? Interesting question. I've never been posed that question before because it's always the other way around. When can I use OC spray and pepper spray? Well, with Nikki being a woman, there's going to be an easier time for her to use her handgun against an attacker with pepper spray or a stun gun because disparity of force is there. And there's also going to be, we're going to talk about it later in the presentation, but there is going to be a home run winning answer to this question right here for Nikki and her use of a handgun with OC going against someone who has OC spray and a stun gun. Okay. I keep on hitting that wrong one. Okay. Lawyer disclaimer. Read this paragraph right here. I'm not a lawyer. Don't claim to be. Any information I give to you here today is for information only. Consult your local attorney for your specific circumstances. Okay? Come on. So if you use a stun gun or OC spray in an unreasonable manner, it may potentially be considered deadly force. And that is something that I'm going to have to get across to you. What is reasonable and what is unreasonable? When you're dealing with ordinary force, and some people call it non-deadly force, which doesn't make any sense to me, or less than lethal force, doesn't make any sense to me. That's why I consider it ordinary force when we're dealing with this. OC spray and a stun gun can be considered deadly if you are not reasonable in judiciously using it to stop a threat in some manner. That's what we're going to be getting into right now. We're going to go through the Minnesota statutes. The statutes in your state is going to be different. The wording may or may not be the same, but it's going to get us down the road to the lessons that we need to hear right now. For Minnesota, they put it in two, subdivision 7 and 7A. Bodily harm means physical pain or injury unless or illness or any impairment of physical condition. Doesn't say much, but the next one is what you really need to take a look at. Substantial body harm means bodily injury which involves a temporary but substantial disfigurement or which causes a temporary but substantial loss or impairment of the function of any body member or organ, or which causes a fracture of any matter. Now, let's see this word again, which causes a temporary but substantial loss or impairment of the function. Well, doesn't that what OC spray and a stun gun will do? It will temporarily put you out of your mind or your wits about you. So, am I telling you that you can't use a handgun against an attacker because it's just a temporary scenario? Well, hold on. The United States criminal the USCS defines it as a cut, abrasion, bruise, burn, or disfigurement. I put that in there because I want to kind of make it clear to you a temporary situation. If somebody put a cigarette out on your arm, it's going to be a temporary situation. It's not going to be considered a deadly force because a reasonable person is not going to consider being burnt by a cigarette that it's going to kill you. Okay, that's what I'm trying to get to. Is a temporary. If someone slapped you on the face and caused a red mark or bruised an eye, that kind of a thing, that's going to be a temporary thing, but that is still a substantial bodily harm, which you can use ordinary force to deflect the pain. Okay. Great bodily harm. Great bodily harm means bodily injury which creates a high probability of death. That's the biggest thing. What is your attacker using? What are they doing for a high probability of death, or which causes serious permanent disfigurement, or which causes a permanent and protracted loss of impairment of the function of any bodily member or organ, or other serious bodily harm? Now, I want to put in this, other states put in the verbiage rape. It's great bodily harm. Minnesota really doesn't do that. And also arson. Arson is also considered a great bodily harm, but you need to read your black letter law and case law to make sure that it is still a violent felony that you can use deadly force for trying to stop someone from burning your house down. Okay? So again, we want to go through this. Now, again, the cigarette on the arm doesn't create a high probability of death, but a knife wound through the arm does create a high degree probability of death because you're bleeding. Did they hit an artery? That kind of thing. It would be reasonable to assume that an injury of that sort is great death or bodily harm, right? Now, this is the elevation of force. I'm not a big fan of elevation of force, but it gives you a visual cue of what is going on. The reason I'm not a very big fan of it is because police use it, and they have to engage the subject. They have to, control the situation. With civilian use, you don't. You don't have to take the guy into custody who's being a dill hole to you. But if you look at it, the number one layer here at the bottom here is no injury. Visual indicators, confident demeanor. Second one, no injury. Verbal indicators, verbal deflection. What does that mean? Are you jawing at the other person? Again, I'm not a big fan of jawing at the other person. It does you no good. So that's the injury. Now, when we're talking about bodily injury, this is where it comes in. Assault and battery. Reasonable force. Minor injury, the cigarette, the slap, the punching, that kind of thing. All that is going to be bodily injury, so you can use ordinary force. And at that point, if it's deemed reasonable, you can use your OC spray and or stun gun. Okay. Now, if you see that ordinary force, it has 1, 2, 3. It has different layers. It has different rabbit holes you go down. It has different reasonableness. What is reasonable to you is not going to be reasonable to somebody sitting in an office somewhere. And that same case in a different jurisdiction is going to be looked upon different from state to state, to situation, from person to person. You have that ambiguity in there. With the top one, if you look at it, deadly force only has one ladder, one ring, because a deadly threat from a knife is the same as a deadly threat from a bat, which is the same as a deadly threat from a 308 500 yards away, right? That's going to give you a little bit of a mindset on how the continuum of force can help help you visualize what is going on. So again, if you are unreasonable in your execution of delivering OC spray or a stun gun, and if it's unreasonable, it could be considered deadly force. So it's right in the middle of that 3 and 4 kind of scenario, and that's why I have never been an extraordinarily big fan of OC spray stun guns to an able-bodied male. All right, just the way it is. Okay. Minnesota, justifiable taking a life. Same verbiage of anywhere else. The intentional taking a life of another is not authorized in section whatever, except when necessary in resisting or preventing an offense which the actor reasonably believes exposure to the actor or another to great bodily harm or death, or preventing the commission of a felony in the actor's place of abode. The actor's place in abode, that's unique to Minnesota. Don't worry about it, okay? It's not going to be that specific in any other state other than Massachusetts. Okay, Massachusetts and Minnesota are cut from the same cloth. I'm sorry to say that, but okay. So now what you know is that you can use a handgun if it is going to create great bodily harm or death, but in a reasonable fashion. All right? We also need to know what a dangerous weapon is. It means any firearm, whether loaded or unloaded, or any device designed as a weapon and capable of producing death or great bodily harm, incombustible, that's a Minnesota thing, incombustible or flammable liquids or another device or instrumentally that in a manner it is used, and this is the phrase that we need to get to, or intended to be used, is calculated or likely to produce death or great bodily harm. The best part of deciding if an instrument can cause death or great bodily harm is if it is intended to cause great bodily harm or if it is likely. And if it is in either of those camps, you can use deadly force. All right? I'm going to go through this video a little bit. I want you to look at these people's faces. These people are going to be getting OC sprayed. They're Marines. And you're going to tell me if this is great bodily harm or just bodily harm, okay?
Yeah. Okay, please.
How's that for bad COC? COC. Open your eyes. Totally missed you on that. Grab your COC right here. Put it in your pocket. You gotta open your eyes or you won't know what the hell you're gonna hit. Get back! Get back! Get back! COC? COC. Open your eyes. COC? COC. Open your eyes.
You guys look.
It's a really intense burn. It's like you have a really prickly, very, very sharp, lots of needles against your eyeball. The most difficult part is trying to keep your eyes open. Your eyes slam shut. It's very difficult to keep them open to see what's happening to you. I'd say the hardest part for me was the visibility. I could hear what was going on. I could tell where the staff sergeant was, but I couldn't see much of anything. I think it'll make me prepared to be calm and respond in a rational and coherent way if I run into this opportunity again.
Bring up the chest!
There you go. Now go ahead and bring his hand down. Deep breath in your dick. Keep your deep breath in your eye. Open your eyes. Blink them, blink them, blink them. Two. That's that wind blowing. Yeah.
It is the worst pain that I've ever felt in my entire life.
Do you feel this pain? It's good pain.
He's wearing eye protection, okay? Everyone's gonna wear eye protection if they're near the taser. Taser, taser, taser. Good. Okay, for this shot, I'm gonna miss on purpose, and then follow up with the drive stun to complete the circuit. Taser, taser, taser. Okay, relax, don't move. I missed. I got him with one probe, and I missed with the other one, so all he got was a stun. This time I'm gonna complete the circuit so he gets the lockup. Wait, Dad, you wanna come around? Yeah, sorry, come around. Alright, make sure you take him down. Taser, taser, taser. Short spread. Taser, taser, taser. See, he...
Okay, now after looking at that video, what do you think? Is that bodily harm or great bodily harm? Even though it's going to be temporary to a lot of people, are you going to be able to defend yourself against an attacker? Well, let's keep on going. Let's find out what else we can do. In order for you to deploy this OC spray and a stun gun, you must be the person without fault. You can't start the fight. You can't provoke the fight. You can't egg the fight on. You must truly be the innocent person, just like with deadly force. It must be an immediate threat of bodily harm. Now, it has to be happening now. You don't have to wait for the punch to be thrown, but it has to be an imminent threat of bodily harm right now. That is when you can deploy the ordinary force OC spray. It must be proportional to that threat. Again, we are dealing with that different three levels of ordinary force on that ladder. Where are you on that ladder? Depends. So if you're still in the verbal argument, but the threat isn't imminent, and you use it too soon, you could end up being in jail for an aggravated assault. Okay, that pepper spray in your hand is a weapon, a dangerous weapon that has been classified. Some states it isn't a dangerous weapon, others it is, but you could be going to jail for an aggravated assault if you're not reasonable in deploying it. Again, must be reasonable in the defense of the attack. If you are not being reasonable, Ralph, in deploying this thing, it could happen to you over and over again. Again, for people who've been listening to me for a while, what is this really turning into? It is turning into innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness, but we don't have avoidance. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So you have to have the same pillars to deploy OC spray and a stun gun, just like you do with a firearm. That is another reason I've never been an extraordinarily big fan of OC spray. All right. Here we go. There is no requirement for duty to retreat with ordinary force. I want to get that out there. I want to say this as much as I can. There is no duty to retreat with ordinary force. It is only a requirement for deadly force. However, if you can leave safely, leave. Do not be a moron. Do not be someone who wants to look for a use of force event. You tell me. This is going to be a little video on someone who gets pepper sprayed, and you tell me what in your mind is going to be required if this is a good spray or a bad spray. Oh, and they're swearing.
She's pepper spraying her.
She got pepper spray. Go to the bathroom and wash it. Yo, let's get the fuck out of here.
Now, is this a good spray or a bad spray? I would say it's very in the middle. All right. What happened is she threw something at her, barely missed her head. And then she was about to leave. She came back. But what happened? The other woman who was sitting down there came toward her, started mouthing off at her. But as soon as the other woman put her hand up to her face, that is when she sprayed. I think both of these parties are bad actors. I think they were willing participants. We don't know what happened in the beginning, but I think she did have a self-defense event with pepper spray. But I think I think they're both bad actors in some fashion. Okay. Here's another one. I won't say much up front. Tell me what you think of this scenario.
All the time, dude. More muffins. There's only like 15 more muffins there. I can wait.
There's only like 15 ass whoopings if you don't get the fuck out of my face.
You're exactly right now. Did that just happen? Did you get enough muffins?
You think I'm playing? Say something else. Say something else and watch me beat your ass.
Oh, come on. Have a little sense of humor, please. Come on.
Say something else. Say something else. I'm going right to the car with my man. Say something else. Yeah, I got that. Say something else. Just please. Do something
else.
Told your stupid ass. Now what's poppin'? Now, did I tell your dumb ass? Don't fuck with me. Now, I did get enough muffins. After that.
This was an argument that she was buying too many muffins. You know, he was being a jackhole. He was probably he seems consistent with me for marijuana use. That's just the way I'm looking at it. She just wanted him to say one more thing, and she had the pepper spray out, and she just squirted him for no reason whatsoever. Perfect example of aggravated assault right there. There is no bodily injury happening to this woman at all, even though that the guy was a pain in the butt. There was no bodily injury. So, again, just because you have pepper spray and you're dealing with jackholes, you have to make sure that bodily injury or great bodily harm, I don't want to put that off the table. You can still use OC spray if someone's coming after you with a knife. So bodily injury or great bodily injury, you can use OC spray or OC spray or a stun gun. All right. Here's another incident. Tell me if this is warranted or.
It's right up against the firewall. I can't get to the coil pack bolt. I put the trunnion upgrade in the rocker arm, but
more than a couple of years ago. Let's see, probably 2013.
Like 2 years before she was
2013. So, anyways.
Yeah, we're good. If you want me to stop, I just try to figure out how hard.
Well, did you do the research? I asked you.
I dropped everything I was doing right away.
With you. Just do my computer, please.
Just give me that $49. Give me that $49. You want it? You want it? Let's go.
You're gonna give me my computer, dude.
How about I'll give it to you?
Really? Go ahead and call. Please. Go ahead and download it. Go ahead, read it. Go ahead, get on. Go ahead. Go ahead. This is a minor threat.
Call the cops. Go.
No, we're going to. Don't worry about it.
Get the fuck out.
No, I'm not
going
out
of my shop.
I wish you would.
Get out of my shop.
$49, you don't know who I am, dude. You think it's $49 birthday? You're tripping. You better just give my
You don't know who I am. Better get the fuck out of here.
It doesn't matter.
Get out of here.
It really doesn't matter who you are, okay? You don't scare me. You're gonna give me.
You don't scare me. I'm not giving you shit, motherfucker.
You gotta give me.
You want this?
Do what you gotta do. You want this? You do what you gotta do. You gotta give me my computer.
Shut that door, will you?
No. You gotta.
Did you call?
Give me the computer. I'm not getting anywhere.
Get.
I'm not getting anywhere.
Get.
I'm not going anywhere.
Get.
At all.
Get the fuck out of here.
No, I'm not getting nowhere. Give me my computer.
Shut
and
the
I'll
door.
be on my way.
Shut the door.
No, I'm not.
Give me $49.
You're not
good.
getting $49.
What am I getting? I'm fighting you right now.
What? I'm not giving you $49 for 5 minutes.
Get out of
You
here.
touched me with I haven't
Get
touched
out of
you
here.
at all. And you can't hit me with my computer.
Get out of here.
Get. Make sure they're coming. Thank you. You're going to jail today, dude.
Oh, I'm going to jail?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, you've already assaulted me.
I've assaulted you?
Yes, you've assaulted. Excuse me, I grabbed my property and you assaulted me.
Get out of here right now.
Witness. No,
get out of here. I'm about to.
Go ahead. I wish you make matters worse. Because if you do that, then excuse me, I grabbed my property and you assaulted me.
Get out of here right now.
Witness. No,
get out of here. I'm about to.
Go ahead. I wish you make matters worse. Because if you do that, then
Now, there's a lot more elements in this. It's obvious his business. I don't know if he has the castle doctrine state. Stand your ground in this state in his business, which he has a thing to do. The other complication is that he did ask the person to leave. So now the person is trespassing. He's a trespasser. If you also look with his hands, the guy would put his hands into his pockets on his hoodie once in a while too. And just before the spray, his left hand was in the thing. I don't know if that had anything to do with the reason why he decided to deploy the big bear spray. And just to let you know that that big old thing, in some states it's illegal to have that big old thing. So again, the reason I don't get into OC spray and stun guns is because it's not congruent, Self-defense law is pretty much the same in all 50 states. Ordinary force isn't the same in all 50 states when it comes to pepper spray, bear spray, stun guns. So that's why I don't deal with it that often, because I can't do 50 different jurisdictions. It's just totally impossible. So my estimation, if he was reasonable, I think it was reasonable for him to spray it. I think it was a mistake for him to say that he's not afraid of him, because you have to fear for your life for great bodily harm, or in this case, fear for bodily injury at least. Okay. So him expressing that he's not afraid of him is him trying to be a big man, saying, I'm not afraid of you. When you're in a fight, I don't care, whine like a baby, whatever you want to do, but say that you are in fear that you're going to hurt him, not that you're the bigger man and he's not afraid of you. Okay. So again, let's go through this. If you use OC spray in a stun gun unreasonably, it may be considered deadly force. We've already talked to you about that. So if you're still in the jaw match and he wasn't showing any aggressive like the woman sprayed, that could have been considered a deadly force if something happened to the guy. If he had a chemical reaction to it where his nasal passages or whatever blew up so much that it created hard to breathe. If you used, maybe let me go to the next one. Here we go. If the person had a bad chemical allergy reaction to the chemical. I'm sorry, I wrote this a while ago and I forgot what I put down. Okay, getting ahead of myself. If the person had a heart attack from a stun gun, all right, and it wasn't deployed properly, you could be going to jail for a long time, all right? So you have to be really sure that your deployment of this stuff is reasonable, is immediate, and you are the innocent person. Going to have another video here. I'll talk a little bit about now. This is a police video, and the guy has a stroke. Don't know if the pepper spray and stun gun, they got both, was the cause of the stroke, or if he had a stroke beforehand, and that's why he wasn't complying with police. But this is a video that you need to be aware of, where medical conditions to the other person that you're deploying this stuff on could go bad. Right? There's no sound for a little bit of it. Here we go. There goes the stun gun. The other officer puts his gun away. Look how long that spray is, and the guy isn't reacting. Did he have a stroke with the stun gun? I'm not sure.
Get out the car, I'm gonna fucking smoke you. Get out the car right
now. Cop lost his job. That's all I know about it. So, and I never really followed up on if he had a stroke before all this stuff happened, and the police jumped all over his butt because he wasn't responding properly. But the lesson that we need to really get to is this. This is where it bleeds over to deadly force, right? I know this is getting a little bit long. So let's get back to her question, Nikki's question, which is, didn't I do Nikki's question? Yeah, here we go. Improper use of jail time. If pepper spray and stun guns are considered less than lethal force, will I go to jail for using my gun? Nikki sent that in. OC spray and stun guns cannot be used as an offensive weapon. This is a black letter law in a lot of states. You cannot use it as an offensive weapon. So if a bad guy comes after you, they're using pepper spray on you, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, I don't claim to be, but in my opinion, you can use deadly force if it is an attacker using it as an offensive weapon. Okay. Also, if your intent is to cause harm, it may be considered deadly force. So that robber, I almost guarantee it's his intent is to incapacitate you in some manner. You saw those videos with the Marines? Are you going to be on the other side of that OC spray? Are you going to be on the other side of that stun gun? All right? Doesn't matter who it is. It could be Nikki, who is a smaller woman, or it could be a 6'12" guy, a 6'13" guy, 619 pounds. I don't really think it matters when a bad guy comes after you in an offensive manner whose intent is to do you harm. So that is my opinion. All right? My name is Jeff. This is Castle Tools, your 2A Self-Defense Law Network. I hope this helped.